Today, I'm going to talk to you about the art of seller psychology, getting them to want you as their buyer. Well, if you finish out today and you don't know how to build that cosmic bond, then I have failed you today because I'm going to teach you exactly how you do it. We have a section in Bizar Financing in the pro workbooks. It's about how to build a cosmic bond with the seller. And we tell people it's one of the most important things that they'll ever do is to master that ability, because that's what it takes to get that seller to want you as their buyer. And so today we're going to go through that as an update because we have more information to share with you today than is currently in the workbook. So what I'm going to do is direct your attention, if I can, to the side panel. And you'll notice that if you scroll or look down that side panel, they have something there called handouts. And we have a handout in there that you can download that will cover part of what we're going to cover today, but it's a great checklist for you when it comes to doing this. And I would just encourage you right now to download it so you don't forget. But let's just stay, if I can, with having your attention here, because I'm going to cover them with you in a way that hopefully will be very impactful and help you to remember them and to use them very, very effectively. By way of introduction, for those of you who have gone through the Bizar Financing Pro course, you may have heard me say something like, the purchase of a business is first and foremost a psychological transaction. People think it's a business transaction, it's a money transaction, and yeah, it has those things in it. But at the results level, it's all about psychology. It's all about how the owner feels about you as a buyer and how you feel about the seller, because you're going to be making a similar psychological decision as to whether or not this company that comes with that seller has potentially your partner for a while. It's going to depend on how you feel about each other. So I want to reinforce one more time. If you take away nothing more from this particular webinar that we're going to have together, please take away that focusing on the psychological side of this buying transaction is the single most important factor that you are going to master in the acquisition of a business. Let's start out with the obvious. The owner will not sell the business to you if they dislike you, if they mistrust you, if they disrespect you. Emotionally, they simply cannot turn over to you the upbringing of their child that they have nurtured from infancy through all of the trials and tribulations that it takes to build a business. And now they're going to turn that child over to somebody. You can see the ramifications of those three elements that I listed for you there. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If they don't like you, if they mistrust you, if they disrespect you, you can have the highest offer, you can have the biggest bank account, and they will not sell their child to you. They'd rather let it go to somebody else who they feel very differently about than you. So this is an extremely important concept. You don't win deals because you offer the highest price. You win them because the seller wants you to own their company. And while most buyers focus on the financials, the smart ones focus on the founder's psychology. Now, the only time that what I'm going to explain to you today doesn't fully apply is if the person that you're buying the business from isn't the founder, didn't start the business, didn't build it up over years, bought the business 3 to 5 years ago, and now they have other reasons for wanting to sell, but they never fully adopted the business as their child. Okay, then these points may be a little different. But for the vast majority of businesses out there, this applies not only partially, but literally, absolutely. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to create what I call the cosmic bond. Because so many times when I stress this cosmic bond building thing, people will ask me, well, how do you do that? How do you build a cosmic bond with the seller? What does that mean? What does it entail? How do I do it? Well, if you finish out today and you don't know how to build that cosmic bond, then I have failed you today, because I'm going to teach you exactly how you do it. The cosmic bond is a connection that makes the seller root for you to succeed. When I say root for you to succeed, they want you to be the successful buyer of their business. There'll be other bidders perhaps, but if you've built that cosmic bond, the seller will be rooting for you to be the successful buyer. You've all had the experience, I'm sure, of talking to sellers. And they always start out talking money, right? Well, how much you're going to give me for the business? Here's my asking price. Okay, whatever it is, they start out talking money. But they decide based on feelings of trust, legacy, and continuity. I'm going to explain what these all mean in just a moment. They want to know, will my people be safe with you? Will my name still mean something? Can the buyer, that's you, run the business? If they don't think you can, they're not going to sell it to you. Now, there are various types of sellers, and we're going to cover the ones that are important for you to focus on for a moment. So some of the businesses you're going to look at, the sellers are going to be burned out, but they're still proud. They have pride in their company, and they want to see it have a good future. They may be loyal to their employees, to their community, but they're financially anxious. They need to know they've got enough money to have financial security. And what that means, by the way, is if there's a seller financing element to this, they got to have confidence they're going to get paid on their seller financing note. Sometimes the sellers are stuck and unsure how to let go. But there's another kind of seller too. And these are folks who don't really want to sell, but they have a need and they can't fill it. They're trying to get to the next level, but they don't know how. They're stuck at a plateau, don't know how to transcend it. And what they really want is not a buyer. What they really want is a growth partner. And that means they maybe need your capital or financial know-how, because you had to make money where there is none, right? That's what you're here to start financing to do. So they either need the capital or your financial know-how, how to finesse capital. They need your skills and experience, right? So they want to grow. They can't do it themselves. They need a growth partner. And if you position yourself right, that's you. Now, cosmic bond, what is it and why does it win? Well, first of all, let's look at a definition. And I don't mean this to be an exclusive definition, meaning no other definition would apply, but it's just a good one. The cosmic bond is a deep connection between you and the seller, where basically you like, trust, and respect each other. And you both want each other to come out of this transaction successful, because you really built that bond of like, trust, and respect. And that means that even if your offer isn't the highest or the best terms, that cosmic bond carries the day. There are three ingredients to the cosmic bond. Number one is respect. And you build that when you show admiration for what they built. Okay? So you show admiration for what they built, you show respect to the seller. And the natural thing when somebody shows you respect is a reciprocation. You can't help but have some respect for people who show respect to you. The second item is trust. And that's a matter of demonstrating character, not just competence. There are a lot of people out there very competent, but you wouldn't trust them. And so competence isn't enough. Trust is a very important element. And you heard me say before, liking each other, okay? Well, how do you get to like somebody? In business, especially. And the key to this is generally a shared vision. And so when you're talking to the seller, you want to be painting a future with them in it, even if temporarily, even if they're only going to be there for a 6-month transition period or a year, or maybe they're going to be there for 3 to 5 years and run the business, during which time you will replace them with somebody really wonderful over time. In fact, that may be part of their mission, is to find their replacement and build it into the company. But if you pay attention to these three areas, respect, trust, and have a shared vision with the seller in it, you have gone a long way towards establishing a very strong cosmic bond with that seller that makes them want you to be the buyer. It's really a matter of winning the seller's heart. Okay, let me tell you something that happened just today. We received a notice from a broker this morning that the seller has just signed the LOI and it's on its way now back to us. So I haven't seen it yet, but I suspect that it's now back in the hands of our people here. And this is a $50 million company. And it produces a consumer goods product that is sold almost exclusively over the internet through various platforms that I'm sure you're all familiar with. They outsource the production, and they're mainly a design and IP company that outsources its product lines to be manufactured, and then they market it over these various internet platforms. And this is a $50 million purchase. That's its enterprise value. Okay, so I'll give you an idea of its value. Now, the company is owned and operated by a brother and sister. And the reason that the company was for sale is that they had taken it as far as they could. They were good marketing people. They were good design and product development people. And that's why the company did so well. But it had now outgrown them. It had grown to where they could no longer manage it. They could no longer handle all of the aspects that had literally grown beyond them. And the conversations that I had with them very early on ignored money, It focused on things that you're hearing about today, where that was the dominant force in my conversation. In fact, I'll tell you, we have people here that say, look, Gordon, we're meeting with the seller. Why are you spending all this time on storytelling, on sharing your background with them, on explaining what your vision is and how you share a vision with them and developing that shared vision? Why are you doing all that? We're here to talk business. And I explained to them, you can't talk business until you establish that connection with the seller so that you matter to them, that they like you and that they're developing a trust for you and they have a respect for you. Because in your storytelling, you're telling them about the experiences you've had, the things you've accomplished, the commonalities that you have between you and them. And what you're doing at this moment in time is you're winning their hearts. You're winning their wanting to have a relationship with you going forward. And the clincher for this particular deal was my bringing to the company a relationship that I've built over time with other people. But in this case, I've had a chance to build, and by the way, a number of relationships using cosmic bonding with 18 players in every aspect of business. So you want marketing, you want production, you want administration, you want finance. Over time, I mean, it's an advantage of being my age, is I've had a chance to build relationships with people who are 18 players at every level. Well, when I talked to these folks and I started sharing vision and what I wanted for the company, it became clear to them that they really didn't want to sell the company. What they wanted was a growth partner who could now take them to the next level, who could provide the advanced marketing skills that would take them to a higher level of branding, to a higher level of marketability, to opening up more channels for the distribution of their products, who could resource the capital that it would take to grow, who could help them grow externally by buying companies and adding them to theirs so that their company would grow not only internally through more sales, but by acquisition. And then introducing them to the top branding person on planet Earth, who I got to agree that if we bought the company, they would come in and do two things. One is to run the company from the administrative side, which they had to do in order to do what they've done. And then also to infuse all of the marketing. And this individual, I'll give you his name, it's Bert Ullman, B-E-R-N-T, Ullman, U-L-L-M-A-N-N. And you can look him up on the internet. He's known as the $6 billion man. You can take some of the greatest apparel companies in the country. He came into them when they were $100 million companies. And within 2 or 3 years, he built them to multi-billion dollar companies. Well, when these guys heard that I could bring this talent to them, that closed the deal. That's what really nailed it. And it had to do with, if I hadn't shared my vision with them, if I hadn't asked them what their real goals were, if I hadn't dug down into the emotional and heart level of who they are, then this conversation never would have even come up. And so being willing to take your business hat off, put your emotional hat on, your psychological hat on, and looking at the seller as a real person who has hopes and dreams and wants and fears and all the things that all people have, and to build that human connection with them so that they literally fall in love with you and you fall in love with them. You realize that you're soulmates who it's about time you met each other. You get to that point with people, they're not going to sell that company to anybody else. They want you to own it, and they'll bend over backwards to make the concessions to make the deal happen. Now, you can come to the closing table with deep pockets, and yeah, you're going to close your share of deals. But if you don't have deep pockets, the most effective thing that you can do is build that cosmic bond with the seller, and then start to resource how it is that you deliver to that seller the ideal behind their expectation, so that you can build something together with them. And now you have something really strong. Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about tools and tactics to build the bond. Now, I've mentioned here pre-call or pre-site visit preparation. What I'm talking about here is today, I don't always have site visits with the folks. For example, on the one I just shared with you, I've never met them personally. I've never been to wherever their business location is. In fact, these folks are right now in Belgium. That's their home office is in Belgium. They have a U.S. company, and that's what does all the business. So it's the U.S. company we're going to be buying. But I've never met them personally, but we did this over the phone or call, or in our case, it's we use webinars, of course, because that way you really can still see each other. But it's still mostly done through conversation and the ability to see each other, perhaps on a Zoom type of call or a GoToWebinar type of call. So whether it's pre that call that you're going to actually meet with them, or pre-site visit where you're actually going to go out and visit them at their facility, there's a preparation that you need to go into. You need to take that preparation seriously so that when you have that face-to-face meeting or that call, or however the technology permits you to do it, that there's preparation that you've done so you're fully prepared. And part of that is research. You got to do your homework, okay? Because you're going to form that cosmic bond best when you know the business, know their family, and you know the origin story of the business. You know how that business came to be, what they did to develop it, how they actually got their first sales, what it is that they did to become successful. Okay. And you start to ask them the questions that will elicit from them the answers to these stories, but you do the research that you can up front. Today, if you're buying a substantive business, you're going to get what's called a CIM, which is called a CIM. It's a confidential information memorandum. And that's going to give you a very comprehensive background on the company, what it is, how it works, its businesses, its financial numbers, why the seller is selling. It's going to give you a whole bunch of information. Okay, so you want to get into that, but they also have a website. You want to go there. You can use ChatGPT or any one of the other AIs to ask them, tell me about this business. What should I know about this business that's unusual for the business? So you start to ask a lot of questions, of your AI support system, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, or any one of a number of, there's many of them out there today. But the point is research, get to know that business, and then frame. Here's the frame. Expunge from your mind that you're buying a business. You're not buying a business. You're continuing a legacy, because that's how the seller sees their business. It's their legacy. And so from now on, your frame is you're going to look at that business on how do you continue the legacy of that business? And then you put yourself in that place and you frame your conversation with the seller so that they get it, that you're there to continue their legacy. You're not there to buy their business. You're there to continue their legacy. So the next thing is initial meeting strategies. This is really important too. Don't interrogate. So many people go to these meetings and they think they're supposed to ask the seller a lot of questions about their business. And they start interrogating. Well, how do you do this? And what do you do with that? How does this work? How much of this do you have? And what do you do to handle that? Or whatever it is, they're asking questions and it's an interrogation. You don't want to do that. Okay. Instead, you want to ask questions like, what's been your proudest moment in this business? Is there a difference in flavor there? Yeah, there's a big difference in flavor there. The seller cringes when he may be asking you some of those other interrogating questions. But when you ask them what's their proudest moment in the business, they're happy to tell you because it's their proudest moment. And the fact that you're listening to them and the fact that you're understanding what this meant to them and the fact that you have an understanding and that you're willing to spend your time to listen to this is the cement that starts to go between the bricks of the building of your cosmic bond. So those of you who say, well, I don't know how to build a cosmic bond. Well, I hope you're listening because I'm sharing with you exactly how you do it. Another question you want to ask them, for example, what would you want the next owner to protect at all costs? Now you're going to find out what's really important to them. And the reason that you want to know that is when you get down to where you really want to close the deal, that's what you emphasize. When we acquire the company, John, you and I are going to be partners for the next 3 years. You're going to have equity in the company, even though we're paying all this money to cash you out up front. And I want you to know that I share with you your concerns to protect X. You want to share with them. There's nothing that builds a cosmic bond like sharing your heart and your soul with the other person who starts sharing their heart and their soul back to you. And you get that going back and forth, back and forth. It's cement that builds that cosmic bond. So you're going to want to share with that seller your values, why you love this industry. And if you don't love it, maybe you shouldn't be going into the business because a business requires that you like it a lot, at least, and hopefully that you love it. Why? Because if you love the business, you'll never work a day in your life in it. It'll be pure pleasure for you. It'll be a challenge that you soar to every morning when you jump out of bed. Today's another day of building up your business in this industry and how your vision and the love that you have for it transcends anything that remotely could be construed as work. And how you see the future, including them. So when you share your vision for the future, when you share how you see the business, you want to include them and what they're going to contribute to it and how they're of value to you as part of the building of that process over the next year, 2 or 3 that you're going to be together. And all of that's working to build that cosmic bond between you and the seller. And here's some language that works, right? I see myself as your growth partner, not your replacement. That's a wonderful statement to make to them, all right? Because at the end of the day, you still want them for the next year to 3 years to be an active component in that business, guiding the continued growth of the business. at least until you learn the business yourself or can replace them with somebody else who can now fulfill their space. You're going to want to say to them things like, my job is to make you proud of how this story continues. So you've shared their story with them, right? They're telling you how they built the business, how they found it, how they built it, how they developed their products, whatever it is, and how they overcame challenges. And if they're telling you all that stuff, right? Because you're asking, you're sharing. Okay. And so my job is to make you proud of how this story continues. That has an incredible emotional impact when you're in the middle of this sharing and storytelling and you make a statement like that. Follow up that deepens trust. Okay. You've had that meeting with them. You've gone to see them. You've had conversations with them over the phone, whatever it is. Every time you send a handwritten thank you card, reference their words in your follow-up. Always explain what comes next and why. And the reason that this is important is it's laying down a trail of confidence building. The idea that you're putting in front of them absolute evidence that you care about them and you care about the transition of that business. And here are common mistakes that kill the bond. Okay, so these are things you never want to do. And number one is acting like a corporate buyer. You're not a corporate buyer. You're a human being looking to buy another human being's business. And at least for some time, you're going to be partners together. And you need to act like that. You're not like a company that writes checks and operates in a cold, isolated environment. The next one is pushing the LOI before trust is built. You don't start out talking about sending them an LOI. You don't start out talking about the things that are going to go into the LOI. You talk about the things that I've been discussing with you. Even if other people you're working with saying, well, wait a minute, you never talked about purchase price. You never talked about assets. You never talked about cash flow. You never talked about anything. Yeah, you're right. I never talked about them because that comes second. So you don't want to push an LOI or any of the things that necessarily go into it until you've had the conversations where you're starting to like, trust, and respect each other. And if you've got a propensity to be impatient and overtalk people, you got to kill that demon. Okay, over-talking and under-listening is one of the fastest ways to kill a cosmic bond. People don't want over-talking to them. They want people who are patient enough to listen to them, to hear them, to understand them, to care about what they had to say. Because if you conveyed that, you're in. If you over-talk them, you're out. And forgetting that they care more about people than numbers. Now, they may say otherwise, okay? And every once in a while, it's true. They really don't give a damn about other people and they just want the maximum dollars. Right? Yeah, that happens. But I have to tell you, in my experience, that's 1 out of 15 or 20 companies or sellers. That for the most part, they really care about their people. They care about what's going to happen to them. These people have, in many cases, run the hard road with them, supported them loyally through good times and bad. Remember, the folks that didn't do that, they're gone. They don't stay in the company. So the folks that are still there in the company after 15, 20 years of operating as a business, that owner cares about these people because they were critical to getting him where he is now. All right. So they may talk numbers, but in most cases, they're more concerned about their people. Now, here is a checklist that I put into that box on the side where you could download it. It's a handout. There's a section there. If you haven't done it, then you can go back there and download that handout. So these are the things that are in it, and I'm going to cover them with you at least very briefly here. So when you see the word call checklist, we're saying that's the call where you're doing it online. It's the call where you're doing it at a site visit, but this is where you're connecting with the seller and where you have that opportunity person to person to build that cosmic bond. And so the first item here on your checklist is to research the seller's background, company history, and major milestones. And you're going to want to prepare 2 to 3 sincere, because you've done the homework, compliments about what they built. You know, if they built a company that went in 3 years from 100,000 in sales to 1 million in sales to 10 million in sales, that's pretty extraordinary. So they deserve a compliment for that, and it can be sincere. Frame your role as a continuity partner, not a takeover artist. Any reflection of takeover has to be expunged from your very being, and you have to think of yourself and project yourself as a continuity partner. That's what they need to hear from you. You want to ask open-ended questions that invite storytelling. You want them telling you their story. You want to respond with telling them your story. And you want stories going back and forth, back and forth. People love stories. They get endeared and engaged in stories. and you want to have a good story for yourself, and you want to listen to their story and in fact, invite them to tell you their stories, their successes, how they overcame challenges, how they got started in the business, what were their biggest challenges, and how they were, all the stuff you want in the form of questions that open it up to storytelling. And another key item here is listen 80% of the time. Let them feel heard and respected. Now, I think you can already see if you're following this list, it's an incredible approach to somebody to get them to open up and feel good about you. Learn to mirror their language and values, but you don't want to pander to them, but you do want to mirror their language, okay? Because they've already accepted their language. That's why they use it. It's the way in which they language their statements. You can reflect the same things back to them. Share a personal anecdote that demonstrates your values or connection to their industry. Because if you folks share values, you have the same values, you have a similar connection to the industry, or at least a connection that each of you can respect one to the other. Again, that's just cement for that cosmic bond. Ask what legacy or people they most want to protect in a sale. They will tell you, and then make sure your structure of your deal does that. Make sure that they get reassurance from you that you will do this. Express genuine appreciation at the end of that visit. Okay, let them know how much you appreciate their time and the investment that they've made in you taking this meeting today. And these are things, by the way, you don't want to force them. You want to learn to let them just flow from you, because genuine is important. People can tell when you're smoking them, right? Just look at the political world we live in today. After a while, people understand when they're getting ghosted, right? They understand when you're not sincere. You can feel it, you can taste it. So work with yourself to allow yourself to be genuine when you're expressing these things. And then always follow up with a thank you email referencing a key part of your conversation. It's another reinforcement of your genuineness and your concern and your care. Very, very important. You look at the biggest, most successful people on the planet. They do this kind of stuff all the time. Now, in the workbook for Bizar Financing Pro, we have the infamous 10 questions that we recommend that you use for building Cosmic Bond. Nothing has changed. Those questions are as valid today as they ever were. But those questions were put into our program back in 1980. Well, let me see. If I can count right, that's 45 years ago. So we've learned a lot over the last 45 years, so we can add to those questions. Now, I'm embarrassed to say we never put these additions into the workbook, but that's why we're putting them into the handout, because these are extra questions that can get you to that same spot. And maybe some of these are questions you're more comfortable with than some of the questions that we put into the workbook back in 1980. So here are some of those questions that we recommend that you incorporate into your Cosmic Bond building process. Hey, John, what inspired you to start or acquire this business in the first place? Now, we actually have a question very similar to that. This one's just worded a little differently. So depending on the wording you like better, go with it or modify it for yourself as to whatever feels good. I already mentioned this one. What are you most proud of in what you've built? Okay. That's going to evoke an amazing response. What would you want the next owner to never change? Now you're telling them what's the core of their soul, what they value most in that business. What kind of buyer would you feel good handing the reins to? Then it'll tell you. And then as time goes on, you want to incorporate yourself, at least in your projection to them, in that mold. What do you see as the biggest opportunity still ahead for this business? And one of the reasons you ask them that question is as they start to realize what they still see ahead, and you're going to illustrate to them how when they're your partner, that's what they're going to get to do and see as they grow with you over the next 1, 2, or 3 years. That's powerful in terms of their motivation to do this with you. How have your employees contributed to the company's success? Well, I love that question because he may not talk about all his employees, but he'll talk about 2 or 3 of them. And I know pretty much those are the ones we want to keep. We don't want them leaving the company. So we want to make sure to tie them in with either employment contracts or bonus structures or maybe some equity in the deal once it's all closed. Because we want to keep those key employees really tied to the company, especially if they've provided value. And eventually the seller will leave. The bond he has with those employees will leave. So you, by the time the seller leaves, want to make sure you have a bond with those employees. Are there any long-term members you'd want to see taken care of, meaning members of their team, members of their customers, members of their stakeholders, whoever they are? But mainly it works with employees that That owner wants to know that they were loyal to him or her. They want to know that they're going to be taken care of. And what I do is I usually build something into the purchase where we give them some stock options. They may have to get vested over 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, but we let the seller know as part of the transaction that these people are recognized and taken care of. What concerns you most about selling? Well, if he's going to come up with a fear or a concern, you want to know that because you want to alleviate that in both word and deed as time goes on and the negotiation process and all the things that will follow. And what's next for you personally once the business is in your hands? And the reason for that is you want to make the transition, the succession plan for that seller as easy as possible to do that, including any resources that you have that can open doors for the seller. In my case, I have a lot of resources, a lot of people that I've done business with over the years, a lot of folks in different areas of business. And depending on that seller's goals and what they really want to do, I can let them know, John, when it's time for you to transition out of here, I'm happy to introduce you to Harry Jones, and I'm happy to introduce you to this, or I can guide you through this because I've done that a dozen times for myself. And again, one of the most powerful questions is, how would you define a successful transition in your eyes? Right? Let them tell you, and then make sure that you structure it to conform as closely to that definition as you possibly can. And that will minimize any resistance that you're going to have to the transition process. So these are all important elements that help you to not only build Cosmic Bond, but facilitate the transition of the company into you as the new owner of that business. But here are some final thoughts that I'd like to share with you. In a way, they're takeaways from what we've done together today in terms of exploring Cosmic Bond. And then for reframing, it's important that you remember you are not negotiating against the seller, that they're not the enemy. You're aligning with the seller. And it's through that alignment that the deal gets done and everyone smiles together. And in terms of a close, the business isn't just a deal. It isn't. It's not a deal. Dealing with a lot more here, I hope that you realize, because it's someone's legacy. You want to win the heart and the business will follow. You will beat out the corporate bucket with the deep pockets that turns off this seller at the emotional level and opens them up to you because you've struck all the right notes, all the right chords. The like, trust, and respect is there, and it becomes the propellant that gets you into the controlling seat of that business.